All right, hello. Looks like we are live. Let me just check on Twitter. All right, so I want to go over what we're going to be doing tonight. So I did a few things since last time. I updated a few things here, so maybe I should go over that first. So I'm building this sort of starting screen web audio visualizer thing, and I will show you guys a few changes that I made since last time. So first of all, I added these sort of text banners to the side that just scroll infinitely. And those are pretty simple. I just did those similar to the way I did my Be Right Back screen. So I'm not going to go over those tonight, but basically it's just a bunch of text, and there's a lot of CSS that just basically makes it scroll. Let's see, where's my scrolling animation? I have some scrolling animations down here that make the text scroll back and forth. So that's all that is. And what I really want to do tonight is work a little bit on this D3 audio visualizer thing that I'm building, and show you guys how I fixed this bug that I had last time, and I think go over a little bit about how D3 works in terms of selections and joins and things, because that was basically the bug that I was having last time. So I think it would be worthwhile to go over that and show you guys how I solved that bug. So here's sort of that I had last time, and I think here's sort of what we're building. So if I click on this here, you can see that it'll start this audio player. And now this is visualizing the waveform of that audio, and all these points are rendered with D3. So the issue I had last time was that this was animating, but in between it was building up the points. And I can actually show you why if I do a little change here in my code. So the way this is working is we're generating a big array of points that are just XY points that go around in a circle. And then we're rendering those points with D3. So we have a group set up here. We have an SVG group that I set up here. And so to that group, we are creating a selection and then joining our data, rendering it as a circle, and then telling it the X and the Y and the radius and everything. And we're doing this in a request animation frame loop. So this is running basically at the monitor refresh rate. So this runs constantly, which is updating along with the audio. And if you guys are joining on Periscope, hello. Try checking it out on Twitch or YouTube. Periscope has a pretty big delay, and also the quality is not great, I've heard, so give that a try. Yeah, so I can show you guys what the bug was that I was encountering last time if I just change my selection here to something like .circles, which is a class that I don't think exists, but yeah. So you can see what happens is that it's not clearing or actually like updating these points here. It's just adding new points every time this loop runs, which is making it really slow because now I've got like probably thousands of SVG points rendered to the screen. So the reason for that is that when D3 is doing this join, the data is updating each time, but it needs to know like what elements have changed. And the way that I solve this is anytime I have a selection issue, I usually go to this Mike Bostock article from 2012. This is like such a classic article that he wrote about joins and how to think about selections and joins in D3. So I basically just read through this, and it shows you what's happening when you make selections and try to actually like change your data and render things with D3. So D3 has 3 types of sort of rendering things when you do a join. You have an enter, which is the data element didn't exist before and you're creating it on the screen. That's most commonly what you're doing. There's also updates, so that's when your data has changed. And then there's exits, when you have less data than you had initially, so you need to remove elements. And so how does this work? Well, basically, you give D3 a selection. So right here, I said select all .circles. Now, like I said, this class doesn't exist. There are no elements on the page with the class of circles. And so this is an empty selection right now. It contains no elements. Then we bind our data, and then we say .join circle. And so what's going to happen here is D3 is going to look at the selection, which is circles, which has 0 elements, so it has a length of 0. And then it's going to look at the length of our data. So this is an array that contains, I don't know, it contains something like 200 points or 500 points or something. So it's going to say, okay, you have more points in your data than you do in your selection. And so for every element in the selection, or rather for every element where there is more data than in the selection, it's going to enter a point. If that makes sense. So, you know, if our like current selection equals 0 elements, then our data has, let's say, 500 elements. D3 will enter those 500 elements. Now, the case, that's what we were doing in the case here with this bug, is that we were having 500 elements enter, but the problem was that the elements were entering even when I was just updating the data. And the reason for that is that D3 didn't, well, I was returning an empty selection each time. So I selected this .circles, I joined the data, it entered all these circles, but those were just circle elements. And then the next time the loop runs, it comes back and it selects things with the class of circles. But I never actually added that class to my points. And so none of those elements existed. So every time I run this loop, this current selection up at the top is 0 elements, and it's going to enter those 500 elements. Now, if we want it to update those elements, we have to give it a way to find that. So instead, what we want is that the first time we select this, it's going to enter those 500 elements. And then the next time we select it, we want this selection to already contain all of our elements that need to be updated. So in order to do that, I think this will work if I just go down here and add the class of circles to these. So if I say attribute class is circles, then it should add that class to all these 500 elements that it's going to enter. And then the next time this goes to run, when we select all circles, it'll select those 500 elements. So this is like, let's say this is like the first run of the loop. And then on the like subsequent runs of the loop, what we want to happen is that the current selection will already have those 500 elements that we just entered. And then the data has those 500 elements as well, but the data has been updated. So D3 will update those 500 elements. And we're never really using exit here because we're only ever going to have an enter and an update. The length of this sound array is never going to be less than that maximum value. All right, so if I save this, let's see, class circles, circles. Let's hope that this works. Okay, indeed, it works. So that's basically how joins work in D3, and that was why it wasn't working last time. So every time I have this problem with a selection, it's usually this article, Thinking with Joins. And you'll probably notice in this article the syntax is different. Instead of using join circle, they're using .enter.append. And that was the syntax up until D3 v5. So D3 version 5 introduced this this join syntax, and it's really nice because this basically handles everything for us. So previously you used to have to define explicitly what D3 should do for an update and what it should do for an exit and all of that. With .join, it will handle most of it for you unless you want to do custom behavior. So you can also go on observable notebooks and look up join. And there's several notebooks on here that explain basically how to do these various techniques using D3 join rather than enter, append, and update and stuff. But basically, like you can see here, you can specify functions to join for what you want to happen when an element enters, updates, or exits. So down here you can see, you can tell it on an enter, we want to append a circle and then set the fill to green and then do blah, blah, blah. And then if it updates, we want the fill to be yellow and so on and so forth. But this is a really nice feature, this .join. So that's an important point, definitely, if you're working with D3. You have to actually add the class if you want things to update. All right. So the rest of my goal for today, now that I've got that working, I want to do a couple things. First, I want to change this from points into a line. I want to change this into a path. And then I also want to see if I can get some text to go onto that path. And I can kind of already foresee some issues with this, but I want to try it and just see what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is go to D3 shape. So D3 has lots of functions for making lines. And you can see here how that works. So D3 has a function, for example, called line, where you give it the X and the Y, and it'll basically just draw points through that line, or it'll draw a line through all those points, rather. So I'm going to read a little bit about D3 line. I don't use lines that often, so I'm going to refresh myself about the syntax and how this works. So you can see we have some data. We give it our accessor function for the X and the Y value. And then the way that paths work in SVG is paths will just take a single element that's called D, and that's basically a big line string that just has a bunch of commands that say like move to here, move to there, line to here, line to there, whatever. And so what this D3 line function does is it takes the XY points and then it generates that D attribute. So it generates that giant line string, and then we'll pass that to as the path attribute when we render our SVG. So now line radial, this might be, let's see, except X and Y accessors are replaced with angle and radius accessors. Okay, that's interesting because we do actually have the angle and the radius. Because one thing that I was slightly concerned about is having our points connect at the end. So if I go back to my visualization here and I start playing, see here at the edge, see how these don't really match up? That's because the way that we're drawing this circle is we are defining all the points from 0, and then we're going all the way around. Or actually what we're doing is we're going all the way around this way, and then coming back to the end. So these points at the end don't actually match up. There's another thing I need to investigate, which is, see this little tiny dot right in the center here? There's definitely a mismatch in our data or something. Because you can see that little dot, it's giving us an error here. It says CX attribute expected length, and instead it got not a number. And that's happening for that one little dot there. So what I want to do is I want to first figure out that issue. It only happened when I changed my number of points that I was collecting, so I think there might be some mismatch up here. I changed this, if I change this back to 10 for my FFT size, yeah, we don't get that point in the middle anymore. And I might just leave it at 10. Maybe that's just the way to do it, because it seems like it's handling that many points fine. We can think about bumping it back down if it's having some issues, but I do want to investigate this idea of using this D3 radial, line radial. Let's see if we can look at some examples of that. So we define the accessors for angle and radius with the corresponding methods, radial.angle and radial.radius. Because what I'm thinking might be nice is that this might automatically connect our line for us, I'm hoping. Radian.angle or radial.angle must return a value in radians. Okay, that's good to know. Angle 0 is defined as the top point. Pi over 2 points to the right. Okay, so in D3 radial line, it starts from 0 and it goes around the circle in this direction until you get to 2 pi. Okay, something about cyclical. Maybe we'll deal with that later. All right, so I'm going to give this a whirl. So let's see, we need to have an angle and a radius. So let me go back to our data and see if we actually collected that. I don't think we did necessarily. So here's where we're generating our data in this loop here. So we're saying for let angle equal 0, an angle is less than 2 pi, and then we're incrementing it each time by some amount. And the radius, basically the new radius should be this radius plus this augment value. So I'm gonna collect a new thing here, and it's gonna be radius. This is sort of our base radius. And then we have that augment value, which is basically the amount of jitter that we want in the points based on the sound data. And I'm also going to collect the value that I'm going to call angle, and in our case that's just this variable a. Okay, so I want to do that, and then I want to, maybe I'll just console log that. And just make sure it looks like it's giving me something I want. Wow. Very, very slow. Interesting. Okay. And what I'm really interested in is why are these arrays all different lengths? Oh, did I actually tell it to log that inside of the loop? Whoops, that's why they're all different lengths, and that's why it's so slow. Okay, no, we just want to log this every time the request animation frame runs. Okay, there, they're all 512. So let's see what we have here. Have X, Y, radius, and our angle. Now, what I'm wondering is, our radius is always 350 so far, but that's probably just because we're not playing the music right now, so I think it should be okay. I will go ahead and try this line radial business. Okay, so I'm gonna say something like, how are they using this here? Oh, I also want to see if I can close this. All right, so we will say, do this up here, something like let line equals d3 dot line radial, and then the accessors we need are radius is called a d dot r, and angle is called d dot angle. Make sure that's correct. Line radial. Okay. Seems right. Then I'm gonna leave these points here for now, but I will change them to a radius of 1. And maybe I'll make them colored gray instead. So then I'm gonna copy some of this, just because I want to add this to that group as well. But now I'm gonna call this radial line, and I'm still gonna give it my circle points, but now I'm going to join, instead of circle, I'm gonna join with a path attribute. I need to make sure to change my class here. The class is now called radial line. And then we don't need any of that. So I mentioned here that the paths have this, this D attribute. So if you look up here, we can see like it goes path.datum, data.attribute, and then it's D, and you give it your line. So let's try doing that. And then we'll say attribute stroke is black. Cross our fingers. Doesn't look like it's working. Okay, I want to get rid of that console log to see if there's anything showing up in my console. Doesn't look like it. Let me look up D3 radial line example. Yeah, this is essentially what we're doing. Okay, this is showing a radial line as well. So here they're doing svg.select, line is D3 line radial. Okay, we set our stroke. I think everything is okay here. Some of these have angle set before radius. Perhaps I'll just do that too. I don't think this this order should matter, but just because this is how the example has it, I'll try that. And then we might need to say .datum. Okay. Let's see if that changed anything for us. Nope, still not seeing anything. I am going to stop rendering these points for now, just in case that is for some reason interfering with my line generation. Doesn't look like it. Okay. What's interesting is in these cases, they didn't actually join their path. Like in this case, I mean, I know this is using an older version of D3, but they never actually made a selection. They just did g.append path. So maybe I will give that a shot. g.append path, d.datum data. Okay, let's give that a shot. Right, so they're gonna just say append path data. Let's say dot attribute fill none. Oh, okay, so now we have a path. The issue is because we don't have a selection. Whoops, we're getting that same issue that we had before with the lines basically stacking up on each other. This also isn't closing the line at the top, which I was kind of hoping it would do, but it's not. Might have to try another trick to do that. So let me see, maybe I can just do g.select. Let's call this, we called this radial line. It's a class dot radial line dot, whoops, put my dot down here, dot append path. Oops, I missed a semicolon or something somewhere. Line 133. Oops, I missed a closing. So anytime we actually return a selection, or anytime we put a selection before here, we are not getting that, which seems very, very weird to me. I wonder if there's any way that they did it in this notebook that is like remotely similar to how we're trying to do it. Okay, so here Mike's doing svg.create. create an SVG, create a group. He's taking group, select all, so he is selecting, and he's joining this data called S and N. What on earth is S and N? He's joining path. Okay, so let's try to do something more similar to this. Radial. So he came up with a function that he called radial. d3.line radial.angle.radius.curve catmull_rum .defined. Okay, so what if we do something like this? Just do like select all path, and then do you want to put our data up here, and we want to do join path. Let me just see if that helped anything. Probably not. Nope. Okay. So Mike is just doing like dummy data. So he's just doing like dot data, and then he's saying like A or something. And then down here where he gives the D attribute, this is where he's actually taking region, going data.filter. Now, what is region exactly? This is also a little bit more similar to how they did it down here, saying g.append path d line radial data. Okay, let's try doing like this. What is my data actually called? I forget. It's called circle points. Oh, we got a line. Aha, and it moves. Okay, perfect. That is the ticket. It's really fun to just sit here and watch these things. But anyways, okay, so now I definitely want to just give it a shot and see if I can append some text to this path. I am gonna try to fix this little thing here, get it to connect at the end, but I just want to see if I can connect the text to that path. So for that, SVG text to path. This can just be done natively, essentially, in SVG. And if you go to this CSS tricks article, it goes over how to do that. So basically you give an SVG, and then inside that SVG you're going to have some path which has an ID. Okay, so that's the first step. We want to give our path an ID, call it radial line. And then you want to have a text element inside of there. And inside of the text element, you want to say text path, alignment baseline top, and then you give it a link back to your curve path. Okay. So there's a couple ways we could do this. I could try doing it with D3. I'm just gonna see if it'll work if I just go up to my SVG element here, wherever I had that. SVG, oh, I had this wrapped in a div. I don't think I need that anymore. I'm gonna try getting rid of that and make sure that doesn't, just quickly refresh and make sure I didn't screw anything up. Yeah, okay. So what I wanted to do is add this text inside of here. And this is actually called radial line is the ID that we gave it. It doesn't exist yet, but it will exist in a second. And I'm just going to paste a bunch of this text in here. Maybe I don't need that much. I can just paste this much text in here. Okay, that's not doing anything. So what is the issue here? The issue is we should probably create this with D3 because we want this to go inside of our group, most likely, that we're creating. So let's try doing that. Okay, I'm just going to copy this for reference over to my... oh, did I not save that? That could be one issue. I still think we need to, yeah, we need to create this. But let me, whoops. Let me copy this over to my JavaScript just so I can reference it, what it needs to look like. Okay, so this is basically what we want for the structure. Okay, so we've got this path inside of our group element, and it's actually maybe helpful to go here and do this. I'm just going to pause this. So I just want to be able to look and inspect our SVG and look at what the structure is. So, that's strange. Right now it says we have this text element in here. Oh, I didn't, oops. Didn't save my HTML here. Okay. So we have this group. Inside the group, we have this path, which has this ID. So this is really where we want to put our text element. So I'm going to go back to my JavaScript now, and after I make my path, I'm going to say g.append. So I'm going to add a text element to this group, and I'll give that an attribute of width, and that width is going to be, I mean, does it really need a width attribute? That's a good question. Looks like the width is just the width of the SVG element, so I guess that's fine. We can do that. The SVG is called SVG dim. So that's the width attribute. And then I'll just save this and make sure that this got rendered. Okay, we have our path, and oh boy, we have one text for every single element in our data. Did I already attach my data somewhere to the I don't think I attached my data there, so that's weird. Why is it doing that? Perhaps it's because it's continuing from up here. Guess I need to give it a new selection, maybe. Okay, now I'm just going to go back and inspect my SVG again. Okay, but now it has not rendered anything. Interesting. Just going to try a few different things here. Might have to go back to some of my old code and reference that a little bit to see why I'm not able to create this text within here. This is the right word, right? You just say .append text. You say d3 append text element within group. Might be because I've selected the path before this, because I really think all I should have to do is this, g.append text. Perhaps I just go ahead and put this up here, and it will magically work. Okay, we do have this text element here now, and we still have our path, but we now are also getting we're also getting all these text elements down here. It's so strange. Why are these all showing up? And they are just infinite and non-stop, and they're gonna crash my browser if they keep showing up. I know I'm doing something wrong here with my selection. Maybe I just need to store this to a variable. Still getting all these text elements. How strange. I'm wondering if it's because I'm doing something weird up here with my data when I'm selecting this. Um, we might need to do... Let's just do something like this down here. Could also be because I'm using join and append or in the same thing. I've found that sometimes that actually makes D3 kind of mad. So what if instead of join, I just say append path, and then I let this stay the same up here. Oh, same problem. Swear to God, selections in D3 are the death of me. Whoops. Didn't mean to click R. Close out of that. Every time I ever have a bug, it's with a selection. Alright, so let's go back here now. Try this again. Okay, so... I mean, the weird thing is that this should really just do... Like, this should really just... this should just be doing it once. I'm not even adding all my data on here, so I'm kind of confused as to why it's just looping and looping nonstop. Okay, we're still getting infinite looping. What an absolutely bizarre problem. I've never had this problem before. Learn something fun every day with D3 though. I also would like to be able to just do a selection here. But for some reason when I'm trying to do a selection, it's not appending anything to it, so I'm going to take a minute here, guys, and I promise I will engage in a sec, but I'm going to take a minute and just see if I can sort of like look at some old code, kind of think to myself for a second and figure out what's wrong here, and then I will be back and engaged. All right, so I do really think I should be able to do this by just saying should be joining with a path. And then the next thing I should be doing is just saying group dot select all, and we'll call this our curved text. I really think I should just be able to join text element. But I'm not getting any text element. So what I can do, maybe it's because I don't have any data in there, I can try to sort of create some fake data. I can just say, so we're gonna select all, we're gonna say our data, and we'll give it an array that says starting soon. So that's an array of length 1. So I'm hoping that that will just create one single text element. No, but see, this is why it's creating infinite text elements, and it's still creating them. It's creating them all the time. Oh, and I know why now. I just figured out why. Oh, it's because it's in our animation loop, guys. Oh, how stupid. All this code that I'm writing, all this code is inside of this animation loop. So I'm pretty sure that if I just put this outside of here, something like this, it'll actually be fine. My God, look at it. We have a text. Incredible. Whew, okay. And this is all still inside of our init function, I believe. So this should all be good, because I don't really want this to run until I'm ready to like initiate the click event. Well, I'm sorry for that deviation. All right, but now we'll get back on track. So what was I trying to put in here? I was trying to put this thing, so text, and then inside of that you have a text path element, which has some attributes. I wonder if I can add the xlink href attribute easily this way. Interesting. I don't know. I've never tried rendering a text path element with D3. So let's just try this. Let's add another thing on here, and let's say append a text path element. See if that works. Okay, seems to work. All right, so now we need some stuff on that text path. So we need to give it an attribute that says, what did it say? Alignment baseline is top. And we need to give it the all-important xlink href attribute, and we're gonna link that to, what did we call this? Radial line. All right, so that's linked to radial line now. And then with text elements, to add text to it, you say text. I don't know if it's the same for text path. I've never used a text path element, but let's see what happens. Oh, well, indeed, it looks like it worked. See, we have our text right up here. It's right there. That's pretty cool. So the text is curved along the path. I like that. All right, so what we need to do now is have this starting soon is going to be like a lot of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go here, copy that, and I'm just going to go up here and make a constant. Curve text. And this is going to be really like stupid. I'm just going to, it's probably a good way to do this. I could do this with code or something, but I'm just going to repeat this like a bunch of times. And then I'll go back down to my D3 where I was rendering that text, and I will say curve text. Then I also want to give a class to this. And I will call that class curve text. I don't think I used curve text yet. And then I want to go into my CSS and just make an element for curve text that has the features that I want. So curve text, because I want this to have, for example, like the correct font. I want it to have the correct size, and I also want the color to be our text color. That was a pretty good guess. Oh, look at that! It actually works. It's pretty slow though. It's kind of fun. There's a problem. All right, so we've got a few problems here. Problem number one is, as I suspected, it's extremely slow. So I think SVG probably takes some time to calculate, you know, how to alter this thing to the path. And right now it's just happening too fast. It's you know, creating a problem. The other thing which I didn't really see coming is that actually this path, of course, is changing length. And so as it's changing length, the text, when this thing gets really long, is not reaching all the way around, as you guys could see. So let me go. I'm just curious, again, this is like the stupid way to do it. The way I should probably do it is calculate like how long the text is going to be based on the length of the path and all that crap. But I'm just kind of curious, like, what happens if there's more text than can fit on this path. I want to know. Okay, so it just clips it. It kind of looks cool though. It's kind of fun. Maybe I need to adjust the magnitude of this thing so it doesn't go completely wonky. Oh, this is really funny. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna duplicate this a bunch more times. Maybe I'll come back and find a better way to do this later. Famous last words. All right. So that's my text. Then the next thing to do. So there's a few ways I could think of to make this more performant. I mean, the main thing is that this is probably just running too often. So I'm doing this with request animation frame, which basically syncs the refresh rate to the, it runs the code, tries to run the code at the refresh rate of your monitor, which is probably too much. I don't know how often this thing needs to run, but it's probably not that often. So I'm going to go ahead and comment out this request animation frame. And what we will do instead is try to use set interval to run the code. And I get to look this up because I don't have the syntax memorized. So, so basically this just runs, set interval just runs a function every X milliseconds. So what we can do here is say we have our draw waveform function. Then we can say set interval, draw waveform, and the second argument is how many milliseconds in between, or how many milliseconds every X milliseconds you want to run it. So let's see, 1 second, that'll be too slow. What if we tried like 10 times per second? So that would be like 100 milliseconds. Stepped out of my zone. I had to get out of the alone and figure it out on my own. And I know what I really want now. Can't stop me. Still looks like it's pretty not performant. We can try slowing it down, but I mean, then it's not going to look great if we slow it down too much. The other thing that doesn't really matter, but I'll do it because it's kind of like, you know, this shouldn't really be here now. So we can just say stroke none because we don't actually want to be able to see that path. We just want to be able to see the text. So. See, now it's running too slow, and it's still slowing down the browser. I can tell that it's still slowing down the browser because my CSS animations up here are lagging. Alright, well that was a fun experiment, but I honestly don't know if it's going to work with SVG, doing it that way. So there's a couple other things we could try. Let's see, so a couple of other things that we could try. I don't know if there's a canvas way to do this, like canvas text to path. Alright, so it doesn't seem like, at least based on this initial first click, like there's a really easy way to do this with Canvas, which is the performant way to do it. I don't know how much better the performance of something like splitting JS would be if we rendered these as DOM elements rather than SVG text. I don't really have any sense if that would be faster or not. I'm certain that Canvas would be fast enough and certainly much faster than SVG. So this might be the right way to go if I really want to stick with it. The other option is we can just say, you know, we can just say that this was a fun experiment and say, we experimented with it, it was fun, that's the end of it. Good luck next time. And we could just, instead of doing this whole text warping thing, we could just render it as dots or lines or something like that, like a normal waveform visualization like we had before. And in that case, it would be very, very easy to use Canvas. So that would be an advantage of that as well. But I probably will at least read a few blogs and look into the Canvas solution. But I think for tonight, this is good. We accomplished, or sort of accomplished, what we set out to do. I mean, we did accomplish it. It wasn't performant, which I think I even said at the beginning, I'm worried that this isn't going to be performant enough. And it wasn't, so yeah, that's okay though. It's still fun to look at. Yeah, so anyways, if anybody's joining, I'm going to sign off soon. We sort of accomplished this. The VOD will be up later. So I got this SVG text to go to this waveform path. The issue that I ran into, which I sort of anticipated, is that the solution is just not performant enough. So apparently it's pretty heavy on the browser to calculate this like SVG text to path thing. So even though we slowed it down like as much as we could, like this is only running 5 times a second, which honestly, like for the browser, is not that much. But you can see when I start this, everything kind of just starts to choke in the browser. All my animations start lagging. So yeah, SVG, I guess in this case, performance just isn't enough. We'll have to see if there's a Canvas solution. So I'll probably do that off stream. But thanks to anyone who joined in. I will see you guys later.